At 20th Century Fox, Eddie, you also cast Bracken's World,
Yes,
which, as we commented earlier, is a drama about the movie business.
yes,
You cast everyone in there?
yes.
Eleanor Parker, Peter Haskell.
Uh, no, I didn't cast the pilot. When I came in, the pilot had been cast, and when I arrived at 20th Century Fox, I asked Jack, because I was told that they were going to use, quote, the speed in television more than anything else. So I looked at every pilot they made. I spent 3 days in the production room. I looked at everything they made. And in that year, I think they made about 12 pilots, and one of them was Bracken's World. And it just blew me away. I thought that I thought that the idea of not seeing Bracken and Eleanor Parker, oh God, the man with the golden arm. I'm looking. See, I'm a fan. I don't know if you can pick that up, but I'm a fan of these people. There's Eleanor Parker and Pete Haskell, who I had known before Bracken's World, and the girls were just gorgeous, and the boys were just good-looking, nice kid. And there's this guy. Jack Bauer kept saying, he's gonna make it. He's gonna make it. Really, Tom Selleck. I don't know. I don't know if he's gonna make it or not. That we had the school, and we did the show, and it was just about the ongoing passion and vigor and all of the kind of wonderful intrigue that went on in the studio lot. And the public didn't give a crap. The movie picture people in the industry, they watched the show, the public wouldn't watch it. And it was fun, and it was just so exciting to do. And we'd get actors, name actors would come in and out. And then comes Paul Henreid. Paul Henreid comes in and he's directing, and I'm looking at him, and I'm going, play it again, Sam. Again, I got Paul, and he's saying, hello, Eddie. How are you? Yes, sir. What you just tell, and I'm like this. I'm shaking in front of, and he's saying, would you like a cigarette? And he's giving, he did the whole thing with me. And Bracken's World was a success, even though we didn't stay on more than a year or 2 years. It was a success because of a man by the name of Stanley Rubin. Stanley Rubin, one of the most consummate, truly professional, marvelous producers I've ever seen, who could write. And he's one of the guys that I could say, see, I get annoyed when Stanley Rubin's not working today. It bothers me that a man that talented, he can write and he can produce. Today, you got 14 guys that write 4 words. Everybody thinks they're funny. And now all of a sudden, they're executive producers, associate producers, assistant producers, the producer. Come on, hello. No wonder a show costs $95 million to make. We used to make the Donna Reed show for $40,000 a show. Hello, give me a break. But Rubin, and he had Del
Reisman.
Oh, God, Del Reisman, who was wonderful. And we'd get these directors and we'd get these stories. And I was allowed to use guys like Johnny Savage. He came in and he did one for us. And just the people. Eddie Asner did one. And, it was mind-boggling. It was so wonderful. And it was such fun. And I remember the last day. And we all kind of stared at each other, and we all walked away saying, we did a good job. We did a good job. And then all of a sudden we're picked up, and Leslie Nielsen comes in, who if you know Leslie, is just the champ. And he's Mr. Straight, and he's Mr. Narrow, and he's got this whole thing. And behind it all is that twinkle with that crazy character. And it was Bracken's World should have been on the air even today. It's as good today as it was then, and for some reason nobody looked at it.
Well, they, in producing it, had the same love and respect for show business that you obviously have.
Well, we all did.
Yep.
Oh yes, we loved it. We loved it. Eleanor Parker. Oh my God. Terrible.
Was she easy to work with?
Oh my Lord. You're working with people who care about their craft, and they wanted perfectionism, and they did everything the best way they could, and that made them easy to work with. It's the non-pro that doesn't know what they're doing and where they're going and where the front of the bloody camera is, who's making all these demands. And what you really want to do with him, I beg your pardon, what you really want to do is kick him in the butt and say, go collect your $9 million and say the words. These were pros. These were exciting, vital people.
So I take it you don't watch a show that's on the air now where all the actors make $1 million a show.
I can't look at it.
Yeah. I find it difficult.
Do you know, can I digress for a minute?
Absolutely.
Who's one of the greatest actors that ever lived? Marlon Brando. Years ago, Zanuck has tried to make a deal with him to do a picture called Sayonara. I'm sorry to digress, but this is something I think not many people know this story. And Zanuck, every time he had a new star on the lot, he'd name a sandwich after him. Marilyn Monroe had the corned beef and cabbage. You know, Yul Brynner had the Swiss cheese and ham, and everybody had this. And my Uncle Bridie, who was a producer, was notoriously cheap. And he was the son of an actor, Eddie Foy's oldest son, producer. And Zanuck called him one day and he says, Bridie, I got a problem. He says, what is it? He says, I want to hire this guy Brando to do this picture Sayonara. He said, well, what's the matter? He says, I can't get him to make a deal. He said, why can't you get him to make a deal? He says, he won't make a deal. He says, what does he want? He says, I'm offering $25,000 for the picture. Hello? $25,000. And he's turning me down. He says, why? I don't know. But he says, why don't you offer him a sandwich and see if he says yes? Zanuck called Brando and says, I'll give you $25,000 in your own hamburger, the Marlon Brando hamburger, and he did Sayonara. True story. That is a true story. That's show business.
Yeah.
That's what I love about show business.
That's amazing. Did you have any other experiences with big star? I mean, people who weren't stars at that time, but who then became stars? I mean, did you know at the time you were casting them that they could become a big star? And can you think of anyone that...
Yes, I believe that Freddie Forrest was going to be an enormous star. I knew Fred was going to make it. There was never any question about it. I'd have to think about that. In all fairness, I got to get my head down, or it'll kill me.
Okay.
Is my head okay now, sir? Yeah, there was. I knew, but you got to. I think you have to take into consideration. I cast every day from 1969 to 1972, every day of the year, and I can't remember everybody I hired, but I remember John Savage. I remember Fred Forrest so well. I remember dealing with Jan Michael Vincent, and I'm saying this boy is going to be a star. I knew there was something special. I remember I tried to get this guy Majors, and I couldn't get him to Fox. And I said, this guy's going to be. I sensed this.
How about any ladies? Did any ladies come to mind?
Top of my head, no, I'm sorry, it doesn't.
That's okay. But Marlo Thomas, you knew.
Oh, came through the door.
Yeah.
The wonderful girl that did True Grit, Kim Darby. Kim was on the list to test for Sister Bertil. Knew from the minute I saw her she was going to make it. I'd never had any questions about that at all. I knew Sally was going to be a star. You know something? Sally Field was not recognized as a great actress until she did a picture, so Maybe I'll Come Home in the Spring, which was a movie of the week for Metro Media. Nobody thought she could act until she did that. And then you said, oh my God, she's wonderful. I don't remember the actresses as much as I do remember the guys. But I have to be honest with you, it was a male-oriented business back in the early 70s. And unfortunately, women were not... they weren't given the respect as actresses, as performers, that they should have been. Thank God that the change came later on.
And did the change come with the liberation of the woman in our own lives, or?
I think the change came because of the guys. I think because the guys. This may sound crazy. Michael Caine came along and changed the image of the leading man. It went from a handsome, good-looking guy to a guy like Michael Caine. All of a sudden, you remember when he came on the scene? Everybody said, "Ooh, we got to get a guy like Michael Caine. Ooh, he's interesting." And then everybody's looking at this fella who was my pal, and I miss him today, Steve McQueen. And they say, "God, he's interesting, and he's so this and he's so that." And in that context, when the character lead came in, that's when the ladies started to emerge. And then if you look at some of the shows that came after that, a lot of your leading ladies, look at Laverne and Shirley, two comedy leads were character ladies, So, yes, the change came after that.
I want to jump to Room 222, which you also cast. Did you cast that from the beginning?
No, I did not.
Okay. But you did have that as one of the shows that you were casting.
I did it for 1 year because Mike McLean did not want to do it. And that was when the transition of the Fox casting department was coming. And they were starting to close the casting department up. And it was a matter of Jack wanting to keep certain casting directors on, and he couldn't salvage the other casting directors. So that then became an assignment. That was not an elective. And I did it for 1 year.
So you worked with Gene Reynolds, the
I
executive
worked with Gene Reynolds.
and Bill D'Angelo.
Billy came after Gene.
Oh,
Billy came in in fact, poor Billy walks in when they all went on strike, and they said, "We're not coming back." And that's what Mike came back on the show, and Mike became the casting director when Billy came back. Because Mike, let's see, Fred Westheimer, head of movies at William Morris, was the first casting director. I think then I took it, and then Mike McLean took it. It was not a show that we wanted to be on. There were other shows that were more fun and more enjoyable. Room 222 was not an enjoyable show, for me anyway.
we should mention some of the people who were in that. Karen Valentine, of course.
Outstanding, and as nice a lady as you'll ever meet.
Denise Nicholas, Michael Constantine.
Well, he's probably one of the best actors we have in the business, and where his career went, I don't know until Big Fat Greek Wedding. I saw him in Compulsion, and when I first saw Room 222, I said, "What is it? This is the first time anybody's grabbed this guy?" Back in the early, I think early 60s, I saw him. Good cast, and the young man died of cancer. Obviously, the lead, he passed away.
I'm trying to think who that was. Was it Lloyd Haynes? No.
Was it Lloyd? Yeah, it was Lloyd Haynes.
Lloyd Haynes, yeah.
I think he died passed away of lung cancer.
Right. Now you also cast Arnie, which was another situation comedy. This was kind of blue collar versus white collar.
Yeah, and it was wonderful. First of all, we had Roger Bowen, the crazy major from MASH. We had Roger. It was
You had
just
Herschel Bernardi.
Well, first of all, we used to call him the tuna. You'd say, "Where's the tuna?" Because you remember he did the voice of Tony the Tuna or whatever it was. It was a fun show. Vincent and Johnson were the producers, Duke Vincent and Bruce Johnson. It was a blue collar show. It was kind of a bland show. It wasn't a breakthrough show, but Herschel was a star. He was coming off of Zorba. Let's take a run with Herschel, and that's all I really remember. I don't think we lasted more than 2 years at the most. I remember they tried to save that show. It just kind of laid there, but it was a fun. The reason I'm laughing is because it was a fun show. It was fun people, and we didn't take ourselves seriously. We just enjoyed ourselves.
That's kind of the clue, isn't it? That
Yeah.
If you take comedy too seriously,
Oh yeah.
then you can't make it work.
It was a joy.
What about MASH? You did a feature film?
That's well. First of all, I got Bob Altman. Wookie is not feeling well, and I'm over there, and I knew Gould, I knew Elliot but he understudied my father in Rumple, and Dick was not feeling well. So the first feature really that they put in my hands to help was MASH, and I think I was the only person that knew what the hell MASH was. Because Richard kept saying to me, "It's funny, but I don't know what it's about." And Jack Bauer used to say, "I don't know what this is about, but Altman's doing his own thing." And Richard used to say, "Foy knows Altman from years ago." And I'd met him I was going to do a project with him. I was going to cast for him. He was wonderful. I mean, you want to talk about a true director. Now, come on. And obviously he feels the same about me because on his autobiography, for biography, I was the only casting director he approved that would let anybody talk about him. And I just crazy about him. He had an idea. Ingo had an idea. So all of a sudden, I'm in thrust in to do all the Japanese casting and the Korean casting because I did Wackiest Ship in the Army. So I know every Oriental actor in town. Next thing I know, I'm going to Japanese restaurants with Wookiee, and we're drinking sake, and we're interviewing all these people, and that's how I worked on MASH. And then, of course, Elliot's on the phone saying, "What are you doing, Floyd? Come on out and see me." So I kind of just sat on it for Richard, because at that point, Richard was not feeling well. And it was fun. And then we did the pilot. And I really never thought, except for one name, Larry Gelbart, I never really thought the pilot had what the picture had. So we started getting some very good actors in there. And all of a sudden, the pilot came alive because of the cast.
Did you cast the pilot?
I cast part of the pilot. I don't remember who else was working on it. It was Jack, myself, and somebody else. But we all were, again, that's when the team came in and played. I remember McLean Stevenson. I got McLean to do it. In fact, we snuck him in on a picture called Mr. and Mrs. Bojo Jones, where he played an eccentric minister. And we showed it to Gene Reynolds. He said, "I love the guy." And then we did it purposely to get him into MASH. Interestingly enough, I had always wanted Mike Farrell from the get-go for MASH. I always knew that he, and then as you know, a couple of Wayne left the show and Mike came in. We tried to get Skerritt, but he didn't want to do a series. I remember that. And
Tom
then
Skerritt.
Tom Skerritt. He was the third man in MASH, and that was the beginning of MASH. And I don't think I did the series. I think I did the first year of the series. I don't remember it that much. I know I worked on it off and on for a while.
But the main roles were cast.
We all cast them.
You did.
Okay. Yes.
I know my notes say that you recommended David Ogden Stiers.
Yes, in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I recommended Stiers, David Ogden, Larry Linville. I loved Larry Linville. But David Ogden I was a big push up for David because he had that marvelous, austere presence, and not many people knew that David Ogden Stiers was a brilliant stage actor. So that's where it came from.
Were you responsible for Alan Alda and Loretta Swit being on the series?
Swit? Well, Swit says I am. See, if you ask Swit, she'll say I am. She was one of the actresses that came in. I knew Swit, and I knew her to be a very clever lady. And I think I told Gene, I said, we got to get this lady Loretta Swit in.
Had you seen her work?
Yes,
somewhere?
I saw her on the stage. I never saw her on film. I saw her on the stage. And I kept honking her, and that's where that came from. I think Alan, I'm trying to remember, I don't remember if he was a last minute. I just don't remember if he was a last minute or he was there and we cast around him. I don't remember. I really don't.
But he stuck with the series. He was
one of
the series stars.
Yeah. I mean, I want to say he was cast near the end of the show. And I know what it was. Bill Self kept looking at the Paper Lion and saying, "This is a very funny guy." I think that's where it came from. Then also, we did a pilot with Alan. I did a pilot with him at Screen Gems. Not Now Norman. With Ed. Do you remember Eddie? Oh, God, I can't. His picture's on the wall where he played comedy, and I got that and showed it to them. And I think that had part of it. I'm rambling because I can't put it all together quite right now.
Okay. We're talking about 1970. We're talking about 30-some years ago. What was your association with Larry Gelbart? I mean, when he was working.
Larry married Miss Marshall, who was in the Pajama Game with my dad. So Gelbart, every time I see or talk to Gelbart, "You knew my wife before I did." It's one of those kind of associations. I love Larry Gelbart. He's a dream of a man. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the pilot, because I saw his name on it. Because when Jack said Gelbart's, I said, I'll work on it. Who else? I think it was Freddie Westheimer or Scully and myself and Bauer. I just don't remember it. But there was three of us on it because Gene Reynolds is a very demanding producer, and he's very, very specific in what he wants. And if you miss it by 10 seconds, you're not going to get it.
Did you get to work with him closely?
I worked with him closely on 2 different shows.
Yeah. Did he have his own ideas of casting?
Very, very. If anything, the man was almost immovable in what he wanted to do. And if it didn't meet his standards, he didn't say yes. And I worked with him on that, and I worked with him on Fame many years later.
But you had ideas of your own,
of course,
for the casting.
Gene didn't accept a lot of ideas from outside people. He was very, very, very closed-minded.
Why was that?
That's his personality. And I'll tell you another guy like that, Jerry Thorpe, is the same way. If Jerry doesn't come up with the idea, or if Gene didn't come up with the idea, they get very reticent about listening to outside people. That's okay. I mean, it doesn't hurt.
I'm trying to think of who else that you worked with. Well, you mentioned Burt Metcalf. He
was not there.
Oh, he was not there.
By this point, the casting department is closing down. Burt came in, I think, a lot later.
Anything else about MASH that you want to tell us that we haven't talked about?
Well, I remember Zanuck saying to me one time, he said, "You know Bob Altman, don't you?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "You know Ingo Preminger?" I said, "No, I don't really know him. But you know Altman. How do you know him?" I said, "Well, we worked together in 1966. He was going to do a project at Screen Gems, and he brought in this new film, and it was called Fuji, and he wanted to do it because it was fast." He says, "Can you tell me what he's doing on this picture?" So I said, "Well, I'll find out." So Wookie says, "Come on, we're going to go see the dailies." And I haven't seen anybody. I haven't seen Gould. I haven't seen René Auberjonois. I haven't seen all the guys yet. So I walk in, and Altman sees me, and he's got the hat on. And he says, "Oh, here's Foy. The casting department's here." And so I sat down. I said, "How are you?" And Gould is saying, "Where's your father? Why is he coming to see me?" And I said, "Bob, what are you doing here with all these helicopters?" He said, "Why? What's the matter?" I said, "But I don't." He said, "Tell Zanny to stop worrying, will you please?" I said, "Okay." I left.
He knew, huh?
Oh, sure. Oh, let me tell you something. There's no problem with Bob Altman. It's a problem with Hollywood. They don't understand this man. No problem with that man. He can do anything he wants. Let him go. Leave him alone. Just know he's going to give you gold.
And most everything he touches is gold, isn't it?
And he's such a nice guy.
Yeah. What about Cades County? Did you work on that?
Yes, I did. I cast the pilot. I cast the years that it was on the air, and it was a disappointment. It was a disappointment because here we have Glenn Ford in a western county in Arizona, New Mexico. He had never done a television show. We had a marvelous cast. Dave Gerber was the executive producer. I can't remember who the producer was, but Dave Gerber was the executive producer. And it was the next time that a producer said, "Cast the show. I don't want to know about it." And I said, "What's my money?" And he told me, and I had freedom on casting the show. I never had to worry about who I went after. I never had any problems with any of the directors because by this time I had worked with all of them because of Bracken's World, Land of the Giants, City Beneath the Sea, and all those shows. So we would just have a creative meeting, and I'd say, "I want to get Eddie Asner, I want to get so-and-so." They'd say, "Fine, I want John Large." So I called on Naked City, I called on Route 66, I called on Wacky Ship in the Army, I called on Bracken's World, and I called on all the other shows, and I was starting now to use the good actors that I hadn't been able to use when I was doing the fluff. And I was able now to bring in those good, solid, wonderful actors. And in there comes a man called Edgar Buchanan, the dentist. And he's growling at me. I said, "You keep your hands out of my mouth." They were very close friends. And then the saddest thing that ever happened to me in casting happened on that show. The director was Lee Madden, wonderful man. The stunt coordinator wanted to do a shot over. And you know, that show had Jeeps in it. And we had 3 Jeeps that didn't have a big winch in the front. And then we had a 4th Jeep that had a winch. And the stunt was where the Jeep is supposed to come across the prairie, drop off a divide, and keep on going. And they did the stunt twice. Lee said, "I got to get it a 3rd time." And they didn't know that they had switched Jeeps. And the accident happened. The Jeep hit the divide, and it went head first, and it went over, and possibly two of my actors were decapitated, and one actor stuntman is in the home still. He's a vegetable, and we stopped production, and I think that was basically the demise of Cades County. And the toughest thing I ever had to do was go into the projection room with the insurance people and the police department and identify the two heads floating. And then I had to go to the morgue and identify the bodies. And I get quiet about that because I think Cades County had almost the Boston Red Sox curse on it, because everything we did right, and we did it well, and nobody would look at the show. And that was, I think, the crowning glory of it. The show never got off the ground after that. It was a crackerjack crew. It was a crackerjack cast. Our scripts were beautifully tailored. They were beautifully made. They were beautifully photographed. Music was sensational. We had great stock footage of the prairie and the jeeps. Nobody looked at it. He was a strange man, Mr. Ford, but I liked him because I just thought he was wonderful. And the show went nowhere.
Was that the first TV that he had done?
First television show he did, and to my knowledge, the last television show he did was for me about 7 years ago.
And he's still alive. He's still with us. Yes. Yeah. Fine actor. Let's go to some of the TV movies that you've done, Eddie. The first one I have here is Tribes, which was on the air in 1970 for ABC, and it got a laugh out of you. It was about a Marine Corps drill instructor.
Well, it was about a Marine Corps drill, the squad of guys going through boot camp. Well, the reason I laugh is because there's a fellow, we meet this young man, Jan Michael Vincent, and what we were able to do with that is we got all the young actors that we had used in all of the shows, Bracken's World, all of the different shows, Land of the Giants, Room 222. We had a lot of team. We assembled a squad of guys, and one of the things of the prerequisites was that these guys would know how to go through boot camp. In fact, the first scene of the picture is everybody's got long hair, and they comb everybody. They cut everybody's hair. Comb it. I'm sorry. So the first day of rehearsal, and I was a DI in the military. I was a drill instructor, and we go out, and here are the guys all lined up, and the drill sergeants are coming up from Camp Pendleton. So the assistant director said, "Eddie, you want to give them the web?" I said, "Yeah, okay." And I said, "Jan, here's your M16." And everybody now has told me they'd been in Vietnam. They had been in the Army. They knew what they were doing. And I give a guy, and I had the rifle, and I went, "Here." And he goes, "Don't throw that at me. I wouldn't touch that thing." I said, "Wait a minute. Weren't you in the military?" "Well, no, I wasn't." But I said, "What are you doing here? You told me you were in Vietnam." "No, I was never in the military. I'm scared to death of guns." "Are you?" I said, "It's not a gun. It's a rifle." "Don't put it in my hand." The guy's almost crying. That was the beginning of my experience on Tribes. We kept him. John, God, what was Johnny's name? Good actor. Finally got out of the business, and that was the beginning of a very wonderful experience. And we won the Emmy as the best movie of the week of the year for that.
Was that John Gruber? No.
Johnny Gruber.
Yeah.
John Gruber.
Yeah.
John Gruber, yes.
Okay. We're going to cut there for a minute and be right back.